I am God. I am good and evil looking. So, what did I want to talk about in this video? Well, yeah, it's interesting, how people, they talk about, they might say someone is good looking. It's interesting because, people say things like God is always watching. But then, you have people who will say, oh, they're, so they might look at someone and think, well, they're good looking. And obviously, God is in the word good. Yeah, strange that, isn't it? I mean, the fact is, what is looking? Well, it's a strange word, looking, isn't it? I mean, is it any wonder that people call the crap that comes out of their butt, they call it feces? Feces. If you're not aware, you probably are, because I mention it all the time. But my dead mum, her name was Fee, which is short for Fiona, a very evil demon. So the word look or looking, yeah, looking, yeah. Yeah. Well, people, they talk about Lucifer and the light bringer. And obviously his name starts with Lu. So there seems to be some strange fixation with the toilet. Yeah. I'm sure I've explained this one many times already. Anyways. But this is the thing, right? Because, look and then look king. Well, that's the thing. I'm God. I'm the king of kings. But people are walking around thinking, oh, good looking, ugly looking, average looking. It's like, yeah, but I'm king. I'm God. So, people are totally delusional. They are wandering around. They have brains that might as well be made of feces at this point. I mean, it's that bad. I look at a world and I just think, there's nothing spiritual going on at all. They're literally poo-poo brains. That's how bad it is. They have a brain that is about as intelligent as a pile of compost. And that's about it. Well, it's not really their intelligence, do you know what I mean? Like, obviously, you get people who are, I guess you could say they're kind of intelligent. I mean, they can invent, but, where does that all come from, really? God, really? I mean, but the thing is, these people, they might be scientists or rocket scientists, but at the same, what motivates them, it's like they have a fixation. They're just totally soil based. The way that they think, they are totally, they act like they're nappy heads. They got shit on their brain all the time. That's the thing, they just. Anyway, yeah, and I mean that's the other thing, right? Because obviously I look at a world, maybe there might be some good people on planet Earth. Most are evil, and I look at the world. So, I look at the world through the internet most of the time. Obviously, I have lived 38 years. I've seen, I've had adventures, I've had trips, I've done things, I've seen things. These days, I prefer to stay indoors, but I guess I'll have to get outdoors a bit more soon. Need to stretch my legs. So what did I want to talk about? What did I want to talk about? Yeah, I'll mention this. So, I've spoken about Adam and Eve in a previous video about, in a video called, I titled it, God, Water, Damn, Adam and Eve. And I basically explained I gave some really good examples of word magic that is in specifically Genesis chapter 3 and chapter 2 as well. I mean, so, God had the conversation with Adam about, saying that he, I'll tell you what, I'll read it straight from the Bible because it makes sense to. Okay, so Genesis chapter 2. Verse 15. The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. And the Lord God commanded the man, "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For when you eat from it, you will certainly die." So, the word certainly is a really interesting word because when the serpent speaks to Eve, she doesn't mention the word certainly. But then when the serpent responds to her, he uses the word certainly. He says in chapter 3, verse 4, "You will not certainly die." And so, what did I want to mention about this? Well, certainly, it's certain lie. That's how shall I mention this? I think I should. But, I think, what this is, it's certain lie, as in sodomy. Right? It's about sodomy. And Adam was warned not to do it. It was Eve who was tempted by the serpent, and she ate that fruit, right? She wanted sodomy, basically. And so the thing is, the other thing I should mention about this is the serpent. And so chapter 3 verse 4, the serpent says, you will not certainly die. The serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So, I mean, that's the thing, right? Sodomy. You notice how the word me is at the end of sodomy. And the thing is that that's my thing. And, what's for me isn't, I told Adam, that's not for him, that's for me. And so, this says, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So, this is the thing. I have what is for me, and, I wanted Adam and Eve, I wanted them to respect my boundaries. What is mine is mine. And the thing is that they wanted to be like me. So, this is the thing, right? Because, obviously I created man and woman. I wanted to have a loving relationship with man and woman. And, that's the thing, did Eve like me? Did Eve like me? Well, I guess she probably didn't. This is the thing, right? What does it mean to, if I say like God, so what does that mean? Does that mean that, are we saying that, do you like God, or are you trying to be like God? There's a difference. I used to play a lot of Street Fighter, the computer game. I used to play mostly Street Fighter 4, 5, and I've played 6 as well. And, the thing in the fighting game community is that they like to use a term, and they use it a lot. And the term that they use is godlike. So if some player shows that they have, really good skills, or there's like a character in the game that's really powerful, that seems like a really good character, someone might say something like, oh, that's godlike. And that's the interesting thing, because I was playing those games, and I was watching those tournaments and watching people play, and I was totally obsessed with playing Street Fighter games for quite a long time. And and all these people would be like, yeah, that's godlike. And obviously there was truth to that. Obviously I liked what I was watching. I liked the game I was playing. I liked playing the game. And what was going on in the fighting game community. I was enjoying that. I had fun with that. But what does godlike mean? Well, what do they mean when they say godlike? Well, they mean that it's like God. It's similar to God. Basically, it's so good that the only way you could really describe it is God. Or it's up there with God. It's so good, kind of thing, right? This is the thing. And the other thing I could say is that the world does not like me. The world does not like me, God. And when I say not, well, this is the thing, because there's two different words. There's not without the K, and then there's the not with the K, so K-N-O-T. And so, the world keeps trying to use word magic against me. And the thing about Adam and Eve is that, they turned against me. They chose to be my enemy. And I mean, that's the other thing as well. After Adam and Eve, they left the garden, they had their two sons, Cain and Abel. And Cain murdered Abel, and after that, Cain was sent away. I sent Cain away, and he was sent off to be a wanderer, and he was afraid he was going to die, and I put like a mark of protection on him. It was called the Mark of Cain. And he had a protection on him, so if anything bad happened to him, whoever did it would receive it 7 times over, or something like that. That's what it was, yeah, 7 times over. So it meant that he had a protection from anyone who wanted to kill him. But that's the thing, what is Mark of Cain? Well, some people like to, they enjoy certain types of sex play, domination, they might have whips, or they might have cane, they might, it wasn't that long ago, it was only a few decades ago, well, it's more than a few, I guess it was like 40, 50 years ago now, really, but, how long, it wasn't that long ago, really, it was before I was born, but, the generation before me, they had, kids who went to school, if they misbehaved, they get caned by their teachers. So, the Mark of Cain, it's a magic thing. Yeah. Yeah, for some reason I felt like I should mention that. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. I mean, the story about Adam and Eve, at the beginning, before they ate the fruit, when Adam was introduced to the woman, who he later calls her Eve. So that's supposed to be Eve, right? So I made Eve from his rib or his side, and they joined together, and they were naked together and felt no shame. What does that really mean? Because most people would depict Adam and Eve as naked people, and it was only after they ate fruit that they actually got clothes to wear. But I would say it probably means what I think it means, right? It means that, when they were naked, what that means is they were having sex and they felt no shame. But the forbidden fruit, it was a certain lie, right? It was a certain type of sex that they were having that they were told they couldn't have, or the consequences were spoken of, right? God said to Adam, you will certainly die. So yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I've mentioned, Adam from the Garden of Eden, he's my cousin, he's in my biological family. He's my cousin called Andrew Neil. Andrew Craig Neil. Craig's his middle name. And he was King David. Reading about King David, he was the shepherd boy, and he was celebrated by a lot of people. A lot of people still celebrate King David, thinking he was the greatest king, and that he was so amazing. But the interesting thing is, he used to play his instrument and sing, and there's the book of Psalms, and the thing about David was he liked to play an instrument called the lyre, which is a very interesting name for an instrument. Yeah? Isn't it interesting? Because I made the point about, God said to Adam, you will certainly die. And then the instrument that King David starts to play is he's doing his psalms. He likes to play an instrument called the lyre. Strange that, isn't it? I mean, this is the thing. This is the weird thing. Who would have guessed that Adam from the Garden of Eden was actually King David? But from my perspective, it's like, well, I have to test people. I have to test people's hearts. One of the things that people say about King David was that he was a man after God's own heart. So it's a very interesting saying that. He was a man after God's own heart, and David was he used to be a player. He used to play the lyre, the instrument. So, what does that really mean? He's a man after God's own heart. Really, to me, what it says is that what he really wanted, he wanted to be me. He wanted what was mine. And he's happy to he's happy, he's trying to play the long game. He's trying to he thinks he can take what's mine. He thinks that he can steal, and he thinks he can try to take what belongs to me, but that it won't work. Isn't it bizarre though? I said to Adam, I said, if you will certainly die. And as soon as Adam and Eve, as soon as they left the Garden of Eden, Adam decided to give the woman her name. Let's have a read. It's chapter 3. Chapter 3, verse 20. It says here, Adam named his wife Eve because she would become the mother of all the living. Which is interesting because, what did God say to Adam? He said, you will certainly die. But this is sort of the thing as well, because sodomy is I'm associated with the death card in the tarot deck, because my sun's sign is Scorpio. A scorpion has a sting in the tail, and sodomy it's like it's a type of death, basically. You will certainly die. So it's interesting what it says here, chapter 3. If I go from verse 17, so it says here, to Adam he said, because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food, until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. So, this is the thing, because obviously sodomy, this is the thing, cursed is the ground. Sodomy is connected with the ground. It says here, until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return. Dust is a way of just saying poo, basically. And so if I carry on here, so verse 21 says here, the Lord God made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. And the Lord God said, "The man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." So the Lord God banished him from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he had been taken. After he drove the man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life. So it's interesting because, it says here about the flaming sword flashing back and forth. It's interesting because, Aaliyah Dana Houghton, she has a song called Back and Forth. And also, the other thing is, it says here, that Adam was taken from the ground. And this is the thing, because when Adam was created, he was created from the ground, and God breathed life into Adam. And then obviously, Adam was warned not to eat the forbidden fruit. So, sodomy. Okay? And so that's the thing, right? Because, he was taken from the ground. God created him. I created him from the ground, breathed life into him, and then he went with Eve, and then Adam was sowing his seeds in the dirt. He wanted to be like me. That's the thing. Adam and Eve, they wanted to be like me. Not that they hate me. That's the thing, they hate me. They don't like me. That's the problem, right? They don't like me. This is the thing. This is what the world does, right? Instead of liking me and loving me, they want to copy me. They want to impersonate me, mimic me. And that's the problem. And the reason why is because they want my power. I mean, the story about Cain and Abel, well, Cain, it says here in chapter 4, verse 2, it says here, "Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions, from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast." So it's interesting though, isn't it, how, Cain disappointed God, and he was the one working the ground, and Abel was the one, he had the sheep, he had the flocks. So yeah, So, I mean, if I keep going here, so verse 6 says, "Then the Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. So, yeah. I mean, think about it, there's the ground is cursed for thy sake. If I go back to, where was it? Cursed is the ground because of you. Okay? So, obviously, I'm titling, what am I titling my video? I am God. I am good and evil looking. Lou King. Well, in this country, people call the toilet the loo. Seems to be a British thing, doesn't it? Really? Yeah. It's interesting, James Bond, 007. Well, if you flip the numbers around, you get the word loo. Don't you? Strange that. Yeah. And the other way I look at it as well is, 00. If you put two O's next to each other, it makes a sideways 8. And then there's the 7. And I was born in 1987. So that's the other way of looking at it, I suppose. And I've known quite a few James. I've known quite a lot of guys called James in my life, especially when I went to school. What does it mean to bond? Bonding with someone. James Bond. I mean, think of it now, if you look at the Church of England, they've got pride flags, they've got rainbow flags, and they've got all that kind of stuff, and it's, what people call the Church of England is evil. is what it is. I mean, it's, you know, they seem to get everything wrong, don't they? Well, they get a lot wrong, that's for sure. Yeah. They seem to just think, oh well, times have changed. We can, we can adapt the church to what's modern. Hmm. And that's what's really bad about. I mean, England. Well, what does England mean? England. The name originates from. It's supposed to mean angel land. That's the thing. That's basically what it means, angel land. And then obviously Scotland. Well, it's called the Highlands. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Why would they pick these names? And I can tell you one thing, my cousin Andrew, he always copies me. He's always copying me. He always seems to be looking for ways to copy me. Because I get interested in things, and then he copies me. And yeah, I mean, him and his his parents, they're evil. All they ever want to see is my downfall, while their son rises and rises and rises. That's all they've ever wanted, to see my downfall, my destruction, while their son gets all the glory. Adam, yeah. So it's Adam, King David, and then his parents, Abraham and Sarah, Christine and Donald. I'm God, and I'm not happy. I'm very unhappy. So I think we'll close this book, put it aside. I think I might do a tarot reading. Yeah. Do you think I should leave it? Okay. Okay. Well, okay. I'll end the video now.